Joining me today is Leanne Meyer, who is a faculty member at the Tepper School of Business and who has been an integral part of our women's programming since its inception. Leanne has been teaching in our women's program since it started, I think, 7 years ago. And this year, in our new hybrid format, she's serving as the faculty director. So I'm thrilled to have her joining us today to tell you all a bit more about the program. So Leanne, I'll let you introduce yourself as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan. And hello to everyone. I'm very thrilled and excited to be with you. I was going to say this evening, because probably if to introduce myself is to let you know I am South African, and at the moment I'm in South Africa, which is very exciting to be home with my family. So I'm South African, I've worked in Europe and I've worked in the States. So I bring, I think, a global perspective to women's leadership that I think informs the work we do in the Academy. And certainly we'll be talking more about the cohort, but what's always exciting to me, programming at CMU tends to attract a crowd from all over the place. So I bring, I think, a perspective that may not always be US-centric, which I think is great that we can have those discussions in class. As Susan said, I teach a lot of leadership programming here at the Tepper School and on campus. I come from an industrial psychology background, so that is my background, but also a background in executive coaching and industry. So please know that I come to the Academy with a combination of deep evidence-based thinking and understanding and research around what it is to be successful as a woman in the workplace, but at the same time, a very pragmatic approach to what it's like to be successful in corporate environments. So that is a bit about me. As Susan said, I've been involved since the inception. It is my passion work on campus. I'm very excited for what is going to be a very new model this year. And we've learned a lot from the pandemic around what works and doesn't work. And so we're excited to share that with you. Susan, anything else? I think I'm good. I don't know if there's anything else we need to know about me. Maybe too much already. So yeah.
A great introduction. Thank you, Leanne. And I think to start things off, I think I'm just going to ask you some questions about the program and get your perspective on what makes it so special. So starting very broadly, what is the Executive Leadership Academy strategies for advancing women in business?
So what the Women's Leadership Academy is, and maybe it's to start off with where it came from, is that I think so often we talk about women's leadership development, but what we've really done is just offered generic leadership programming, sort of put women in stirred and said, this is women's leadership development. That is not the case with this Academy. What is exciting to me with the Academy, we focus specifically on the obstacles that we know women are going to experience, specifically because there are women in their careers. And then we teach around what are the strategies and tools and techniques that you can use to accelerate your career. And we know, Susan, every year we have allies who are very interested in this programming as well. And so we share information around, if you are an ally, what actions can you take to support the advancement of women in the organizations where you work? And so it is a program based on the science of what challenges women face and how to address them in a very evidence-based way. And that's what the Academy comes from. And it came from really a sense that we were not seeing a lot of women's programming in the market that really explored what unconscious biases were at play and how to address them. And we've built on a lot of reflection, because we know for women specifically, when they come to thinking about who they want to be as a leader, the purpose of what it means to be a leader drives women very differently than it does for men. And so we spend a lot of time in the Academy focusing on leadership purpose and on strategies that'll help you be successful in the places where you work. And so that really is what the Academy is. I hope that answers your question, Susan.
Absolutely. And I think having had the privilege of kind of sitting in the classroom for a couple academies to see what you teach and what happens, what has struck me has been that there's a lot of personal reflection of people in the classroom thinking about their own leadership journey, but there's also a wonderful kind of sense of a shared cohort that emerges from the group. And so can you tell us a little bit more about who is in the classroom and how that network develops among participants?
Sure, I'd be happy to. And when you say that, it makes me smile, because often, I think we take great pride as a university that it's our tremendous teaching and it's our research and it's the faculty. We bring rockstar faculty into the program that you'll get to meet that makes all the difference. But almost year on year without fail, what the cohort so deeply, deeply appreciates is this deep sense of camaraderie, of kindred spirits, of women in this together, working to support one another and sort of sustain our ambition collectively. And so thank you for mentioning it, Susan, because I think that's what makes the Academy unique, who you'll see in the Academy. So what the cohort looks like, I find it's exciting because it's this interesting mix of women from industry, women from the nonprofit sector, because we know in Pittsburgh, we have a significant number of nonprofits with women in leadership positions in these organizations. So we draw from a nonprofit sector, and then we draw from campus. Women and academics who are interested in our programming apply as well. And so it's this lovely, to me, it's stimulating. It's this combination of industry, not-for-profit, and academics all in the mix. And in terms of, I was thinking the other day, you and I had been talking about marketing that we were doing around this programming, and I'm always careful about putting a demographic in terms of age on what the cohort looks like, because we know for many women, women's careers can be very interrupted. They take weird twists and turns. And so, I don't think there's a specific age demographic in the group. That tends to be spread. But again, it makes it exciting because it's very multi-generational. But I think on the whole, women have had some significant experience who are sitting in that room. So certainly there's significant work experience. And I think what binds the group is the women who are in the room are very intentional about the professional success they want to achieve and how they want to take themselves up. And so I suppose that would be the common denominator in the group. But Susan, I don't know if there's anything you would add to the mix, because as you've said, you've seen what these groups look like.
Absolutely. I think there is something very special about this program is that there is an intergenerational mix. And there's a lot of learning that happens that way, of women sharing, how they have grown, things that they've done in their own careers, while at the same time learning from women who are newer to their careers. So there's a cross-pollination that way that also happens in the program, which is great.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And then next, digging in a little bit to our new hybrid format, as well as the specifics of the curriculum, what is covered, the faculty that teach. I think for that, I can go ahead and share my screen as we talk through.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, Susan, for sharing your screen. What I'm excited about, coming through 2 years of instruction during a pandemic, what we really tried to achieve in this academy is what we call on campus sort of flipping the classroom, where the work that you could do on your own, so reflective work, assessment work, potentially work one-on-one with coaches, that happens outside the classroom. So we've got great sessions, and I'll talk more about what that looks like. But then when you come to campus, we bring you in for a 3-day intensive. And this is doing the work that we know is better served through in-person interaction. And I'll talk to you about what the content looks like. So as Susan is sharing on the screen, on February 1, we have a live kickoff where you get to meet your cohorts and build connections. I think what's surprising to me, we have a fun interactive activity we do that day. And we are always surprised how quickly you can actually build intimacy online. So you will get to know your people, you will feel part of the cohort from the beginning. We then give you 2 weeks to do some reflection. You'll be reflecting on who you want to be as a leader, where you currently see yourself now. You will take some assessments that will give you feedback, because we know consistently women don't get the feedback they need in their careers. And so the 2 weeks building up to the on-campus experience are a time of structured reflection on who you want to be as a leader. Susan was saying we spend a lot of time reflecting on that. Who are you? What is important to you? Who do you aspire to be? And where are you now? And we do assessments. We then have a quick check-in, an on-live synchronous visiting campus, just about what campus is like, where you wear your mask, where do you park, how do you find food? I mean, obviously we're going to send all this information to you, but we'll answer any questions during the session. You then come onto campus, and for 3 days, It's wonderful. You would have already met your cohort. You'll be working together, and we kick off the first day immediately with negotiation, because we know what we've really focused on those 3 days are the skill sets that are often underdeveloped or missing in a women's repertoire for a multitude of reasons. I'm not blaming women for this. There are a number of reasons why some of us may not feel very strong in these areas. So we kick off day one, we do negotiation in the morning, case studies, practice. In the afternoon, we move on to leadership visioning and strategic thinking. We know, sadly, that that is a skill set, that it's the one managerial competency that we see women do not perform as well as men in. And so we'll be addressing that in the afternoon. The second day, you come back and we do building networks of influence in the morning, both what that looks like externally, but how you can connect internally. And in the afternoon of that second day, we really try and be thoughtful about what it looks like to sustain leadership effectiveness over time. We know how exhausted everyone is. And so a lot of that afternoon is spent on what does energy leadership look like? How do you keep restoring yourself for the long haul? And we look at who's in your life. Power partnering is around who are the people in your life and what impacts are they having on the success you hope to achieve in your career. And then on the last day, we do managing people and teams. And Susan knows from past experience, this is always a favorite. It's going to change, I think, how you think about teams. I think we all come to this day thinking, oh, we understand it's all about interaction, but you'll be leaving with another set of criteria in terms of judging how to successfully manage people and teams. In the afternoon, we spend time communicating. We know you can learn all these things, but if you don't effectively communicate as a leader, it is hard to be heard. And so again, that's why it's an in-person experience, because you'll be presenting. And as I'm saying that, I'm like, oh, don't get scared. Like it'll be fun. It's tremendous growth, but that's what that afternoon looks like. So we spend 3 days together on campus, and then you leave. And to me, what's exciting, what we've built on for this year is the feedback that we consistently receive is that our participants really want post-program support. Because if you think about it, you've had this lovely reflective time, you've had this immersive experience. And if we were to just leave you then, it's hard to sustain that kind of energy around your own development. And so you leave your intensive campus experience to develop a personal professional development plan, and then you get to meet with the coach one-on-one to talk through that plan and to brainstorm around strategies around how to be successful moving forward. We then get together, which I love, for a virtual graduation, which means that people in your life get to see you graduate, because so often this is not the case. And we're doing it on March the 8th. And I don't know if any of you know, but March the 8th is International Women's Day. So it's a very auspicious date for a graduation. But again, we've heard our past participants. And so post-graduation, you will get to meet with your coach again. And that check-in will be around, this is what you intended, what's happening, what's not happening. Think of it as a bit as a accountability and brainstorming session. And then we bring your group together again in March for an opportunity to check in as a cohort to see where you are and how you've grown. So that is how we've really tried to use the best of what we know is best in person, and then how do we support you when you're not in person to keep growing. So Susan, I hope, does that give a sense of what we're imagining for this program?
Absolutely. Thank you for that overview. And I think what's really great is that, as Leanne mentioned, we're all so busy and so overwhelmed. This hybrid format with the coaching check-ins and with some intensive experiences on campus, all kind of built in together, allows you to make sure that what you're learning, you're actually implementing in your day-to-day life and in your leadership journey at work. So I think that's a really fantastic aspect, capitalizing on our new kind of online hybrid environments.
Yeah. And I think just what to me, and I'm sure many of you have felt that, is you can build deep connections online. And definitely in the communication section, we're going to teach you about how do you build a network online? How do you communicate online? How do you have empathy online for others? How do you have executive presence online? All of those types of topics will be woven through all the material that we'll be teaching.
So Leanne, we did have one question come in so far, and it's a tough question, but I think it plays into my next question as well. Kind of thinking about what are the anticipated learning outcomes for the program, and how do we tie that to making a business argument for why emerging women leaders should attend a program like this?
Yeah. That is a tough question. And I think, first of all, when I was thinking about this, the webinar, I thought what would have been interesting is to get some of our alumni, and we can bring them into potentially your on-campus experience, because what we have truly seen is women accelerates. And I don't want to sound braggy, but I was thinking I want to actually invite all the women in who've progressed onto the C-suite past this program. And for some of you listening, you may be, well, that's not my aspiration, and that's fine. But I think if you have very specific aspirations to get to the next level, I think this is what this program does. It helps you understand where you are, what could potentially be holding you back at this stage in your career, and what can you do, and how can you get your organization to support you in going to the next level. And so I think we truly see accelerated careers coming out of this program. I think at the same time, what to me personally is more important is, and Susan alluded to this, is what we find is that women become exhausted over time because you're bumping up things that maybe you don't understand. You're tired of feeling you're deficient in some way because that's maybe the feedback you're getting. You have a rich life that you're trying to cram into a work day. And so what I feel this program gives you, it kind of makes you reclaim your ambition, if that makes sense. If you're sitting here going, I just feel like I've lost my ambition, or it's hard to sustain it, or I'm feeling worn down, this program helps you reclaim and sustain your ambition moving forward. So I think those to me would be the two big learning outcomes, is that you would focus on what my measure of success in running this program is, did the participants hit that level in the career they were hoping to because of that program, and how can we support them do that? And so what this program gives you that, and you will feel differently. You almost have an embodied experience that you'll feel differently in the world. So I think that happens from a business justification sense. I think, and you'll learn this on our last Friday afternoon. As I said, we do leadership effectiveness communication. And really what we teach is something called the decision-making matrix. And what that means is, when you think about your stakeholder that you have to persuade, and you'll have to practice persuasive communication in this Friday session, it's what is important to that person and how do you communicate that? And so I'm not copping out, but I don't want to give a blanket statement, because I think for different businesses, there are different reasons why this would be important. So if it would be important for those listening to go, truly, what would be the business value to me going on this? And perhaps it is you'll learn to negotiate on behalf of your company in ways they haven't seen. So that could have significant revenue returns for your company, just because you've learned to negotiate differently. So it could be negotiation, or you could, we've had women in sales come on the organization. We spend a lot of time on how do you build networks of influence, how do you leverage them? So potentially that could happen. You will be building networks in the room with women from very interesting organizations. So is there a way that you will be networking very differently in your organization? We know for many organizations, they're working hard to develop their women talents, but they often don't have the in-house means to do that. So for those organizations, you could justify it by saying, that there is no in-house women's programming, and here's something that I really want to use to develop myself. Or perhaps, I know we often have women who come on the programming because they've been identified as high potential. And that in itself is an interesting comment. But the point is, if you've been identified as talent someone wants to keep, this is a great way to be developed, so that you can, the organization can get the return of someone who's very savvy from a business perspective. So Susan, am I avoiding the question? I hope I'm answering it, because I just think it's very personal. If you really want to persuade your company to join, it's quite a personal argument to make, I think. And if we can help, I'd be happy to chat individually. But I think I would look up after this Google decision-making matrix, and it'll help you think through what is important to the stakeholder you want to persuade, and then how do you build your pitch around that.
And I think building off that, Leanne, so there are plenty of programs out there that focus on leadership and strategic leadership. Why attend a program that's for women's leadership?
Yeah. That's a great question, because I think that's that to me is the pushback I think we hear the most. Well, like, isn't leadership leadership? And it's really, if you look at the research on leadership development of women, what's really interesting is that there are really three, I would say largely three criteria that we know makes a difference for women. So the very first thing to understand is that women need to be educated on what are the second generation biases around how successful women are in companies. So for example, if I talk to you about building networks of influence, we do building networks of influence on the second day when you're on campus. How women network looks different to how men network. The challenges women are going to experience in networking are different. And so to me, why women's programming is important is, first of all, if you went on just a general program that taught you how to network, you may learn things that are actually not that helpful to women. If you learned how to general negotiation, you would not learn that there is a backlash against women who negotiate for themselves. So what are the strategies to mitigate that backlash? And so that to me is why women's programming is important. First of all, we take all the topics, the subjects we teach, and we teach them through the lens of second generation bias. So you'll learn what the biases are at play in these different topic areas. So that to me is important. And then what we do know with women is that things like strategic thinking are often missing in a women's repertoire, not because they're not good at it, because they think it's not important. So what you'll get on this program is the information about what is important in terms of getting to the next level in your career. And then the third area, as I've said, which is really interesting, for women to embrace being a leader, their leadership purpose is more important than it would be in other programming. And as Susan said, that's why we build in these reflective exercises. What we're trying to do is to create the space for you to understand, what is my purpose as a leader? What is my leadership purpose and why is that important? And a lot of leadership programs don't address that. And then if I could add a fourth criteria is you'll sit in classrooms with other women. I don't, often the women who are often attracted to Carnegie Mellon University are women who know about us, and they're often in traditionally male-dominated environments. And so they'll come into class, and for many of them, it'll be like, oh, this is the first time I'm sitting in a crowd of 25 other really ambitious, successful women who have very similar challenges. And so it's the sense of feeling not alone and feeling that you're not sufficient, because I think for so many of us, the feedback we receive in workplaces is that we too much, like we too much of this, too little of this, too something. And what you'll realize sitting and listening to the stories of other women is like, no, you're fine. You have obstacles that you need to address potentially in the places where you work, but you're not deficient. And so I think that's why I think women's leadership is important. So I went on a bit of a preach there. So should I?
No, fantastic.
Sorry, are there other questions? Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about, in the program's long 7-year history, we've had participants who have taken the program as senior managers and are now progressing into the C-suite. From a more kind of short-sighted perspective, from recent participants' experiences, what can they expect for how this will help them in the near future with their career goals?
Yeah, so to me, what I immediately think of is, and this may sound, I don't know what this will sound like, so let me not judge it, is that you can leverage the program for access that you potentially didn't have in your career before. So what that means is maybe someone's not aware of you, and then you can suddenly reach out to a manager in your workplace and go, oh, I'm doing this women's leadership program at Carnegie Mellon University, and they're making me think about my brand. I'm curious, could I have some time on your calendar to discuss? Or we ask students to do this exercise where they gather feedback around other people's perceptions of them. And so maybe you're not getting any feedback in your workplace, but now you've got an excuse. So you can go, oh, this is an assignment we have to do in the academy. Could you answer these 3 questions by next week? And so at the most basic level, to me, my hope is that you would think you could really leverage what this program is into access in different ways. You could be getting feedback, you could get audiences with people, you could reach out to other alums who've come through this program. So from the get-go, to me, just by joining the program, to me, you could leverage it in the short term. And then I think of each of the topic areas, you will leave immediately. You will define what your leadership brand is. We provide one of the most prized, whenever we ask students afterwards, what is one of the things they valued the most of the academy, they all mention a negotiation planning template. So on the day we do negotiation planning, you leave with the template, and it is 12 pages long, but it helps you map how to think about a negotiation. So if some of you are moving into a situation where you've got to negotiate either for your company or for yourself, I think you'll immediately feel far more confident in doing that. You will get feedback on how to present at an executive level, whether that's in meetings or in pitch decks. And so immediately from the weekend after that Friday, you'll be ready to present very differently in certain spaces. So it's almost all those different topic areas that I mentioned we cover. You will leave with a tool or a technique that you can take into your career on the Monday after our in-campus intensive. So Susan, I'm not sure if that answers the question.
I think that's very helpful. And one question I forgot to ask earlier is about how many participants are in the program on average?
So it's interesting. We try and cap the group at 25. We want to have an intimate experience. We want everyone's voices to be heard. We want time for stories. So we tend to work on a 20 to 25 person cohort is what we really like in the academy. So that's how it works.
And then just looking at the schedule and important dates ahead, I wanted to ask about registration. When do you recommend participants register by?
Oh, Susan, I would defer to you on that.
With the holidays coming up and the change in the year, everyone is so busy, which is often an excuse to put something like this off. So my best recommendation is to sign up as soon as possible. And really, as we look into 2022, carve out that time for yourself and your own professional goals and professional advancement. But I would recommend registering by mid-January so you can really block off your schedule and make sure that you can be present and with us both for the online sessions, but also traveling to Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon's campus for that February intensive on February 16th, 17th, and 18th.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. I think you want to register early enough that you can clear your calendar for these experiences. I think that's where to think about it.
And Leanne, are there scholarship opportunities available?
Yes, and I think it's on the website. I would point them to the website, Susan, if that makes sense. We do have scholarship opportunities, and those are on the website, and you can learn about the scholarships there. So that to me is the I don't want to misrepresent exactly what the requirements are. So I would really encourage on the landing page where there's all the information about Academy, that is where the scholarships exist.
Fantastic. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share about the program or the participant experience in the program?
No, and I don't want to sound like a bully or a nag, but I am very aware, like I'm sure all the women who are listening to this, is we know what a dramatic effect the pandemic has had on a woman's career and how many women are kind of de-escalating in terms of, because it's just been too much. And so to me, if you are concerned about the long-term, sustaining long-term, I think it would be very important to consider coming, because I think now is the time to sort of dig deep, reflect, and find the energy that you're going to need to lead moving forward. Because I think, in many ways, we spent so much time in the pandemic just coping that I think we're only starting to see the after effects now. And I'm very concerned about how many people are just feeling, they can't sustain what they're doing. And I really hope that if you would come on the Academy, you would get ideas around how to build a career a little differently. So I suppose that's where I would want to, and this is because I'm concerned about how we all stay committed to the cause.
Absolutely. And I think that the only thing that I would add that we haven't mentioned is that we also have fun in the program.
Yes.
There are a lot of opportunities to network with during the on-campus intensive. We'll have, dinner and lunch, chances to get to know each other as a cohort. And there's serious topics that we talk about, but there are also plenty of moments of levity and reflection. And so it's a nice combination, I think.
Yes. Oh, I think so. Yeah. Sorry, I'm probably sounding very intense about all of this. Where I think where many people are surprised by is just how quickly trust can be built, how close we can all feel, and absolutely, there is a lot of fun to be had.